Hey guys, welcome to People I Think Are Cool. I'm your host, Liz Reed, one part of the art duo Cuddles and Rage, and this is my podcast when you view cool, interesting, creative people. I have to be honest with you, before I recorded this intro, I had two of my cameras fail on me. That's what you get for not recording for a while. Anyways, so I decided to use this beautiful angle in my studio where you can see boxes and another light wire. I guess it's all part of my I don't really care anymore approach to this not to this podcast, but just to in having perfection in what you do. So anyways, in the long run, do you really care that you see a wire back there? No, it probably bothers me more than it bothers you. I will say, the one thing that is very bothersome to physical media people, not to me, but mostly to Jimmy, is when, for all you Blu-ray DVD reviewers, is when he sees stacking of Blu-rays not in the appropriate era and with the spine facing, when just stack upon stack. So keep in mind, whenever you're recording, you are being judged by your Blu-ray collection and how you organize it. Today on People We Think Are Cool, we have actress, writer, director Virginia Newcomb. Big shout out to Andy Geierson of the Alamo Drafthouse Winchester for connecting us for this interview. I seriously had the best time talking to Virginia. She's got the amazing energy. See, I'm trying to not say the best, but really, she just brought all that energy, and it felt like talking to an old friend. I know her work best from The Death of Dick Long. I've also seen her in The Beta Test, but I gotta say The Death of Dick Long is just one of those movies that when you see it the first time, you can't recreate that experience of storytelling in that. I'm trying, as you see in this interview, I'm trying to not give away, but I think if you've seen Death of Dick Long, then you know why I'm being super awkward about presenting this film. So without further ado, here is Virginia Newcomb. Enjoy our interview. I think it's going to be a blast for those who have been creating for a really long time. We talk about the sacrifices that it takes to be in it for the long haul. Because I think a lot of people, the longer that you do it, the more you see people come in and out. And at some point, I know I felt this way at Small Press Expo this year. You're like, oh my God, I'm the old person here. And it's just gonna get older from there, which is fine. But you want to, try new things, keep moving forward. And I talk about that with Virginia. So, oh, also, by the way, I'm not going to do an outro for this one. I have a couple of podcasts that are in the hopper, and I'm just going to try and get right through them so that you guys can enjoy these cool interviews that I've been doing. So now enjoy Virginia. I'm pretty much just going to jump into it. I'm not really, hello, welcome to my show kind of person. I always feel like that's awkward when they do the long intro and you sit there.
You're that's when people are going 15, 15, 15, 15. Yeah, it's just get ahead. Yeah.
yeah, basically. So I saw The Death of Dick Long at Fantastic Fest, and cool. I think that you were there with your co-star.
Yeah. Andre was there. Dan was there for a minute. Yeah.
Yeah, he was there too. I remember him telling us that he was too sweet to a little kid swear, the little kid swearing in the movie. Oh, and his editing around that, which I thought was hilarious.
Yeah. And Poppy, I've worked with her a couple times now, is the coolest little kid. The last kid that, given her parents and her upbringing and her just attitude, would even register a curse word here or there.
Right. He didn't want the responsibility of breaking her innocence.
I know. Leave that to someone else, right?
Yeah. So, and I've also seen The Beta Test, but that's kind of my scope of your work, though. Cool. But I was listening to another podcast interview that you did, I think when you were about to shoot The Beta Test, and they were talking about The Walking Dead and all the other stuff that you've been on and produced, which was wow, you've been on so much.
I've been around. Yeah. I mean, I have been like I hopped the indie train pretty early in my career and just like chugging along on that one for some time now. And like do like a dozen shorts every year almost, like short films. That medium, well, I was going to say for whatever reason, but for a lot of relevant reasons, it's just something that has, is more and more a medium that is either, for a pitch tool or for, a calling card or, but often also at this point, like that kind of content is very viable these days too. So shorts have been an interesting, unexpected path for me too. Like there's probably 40 shorts out there that maybe people have seen or not, and some of them aren't even online. So it's interesting. But I've done a few episodic. TV's been a hard nut for me to crack, but I also just think that it's because the communities I've been in and the kinds of things that I've attracted to have just been weird, indie, alternative type stuff. And that's my film world. And then I've done a ton of ephemeral work. Like I've done a ton of theater, a lot of hybrid stuff too, like live cinema, which is something.
You were talking about that on the podcast that I just thought it was fascinating. Like, I mean, was that like on Broadway or off Broadway? The play that you did where you're just like basically one take, or I don't know if it's one take, but you can describe it better. Do you mind describing the play?
No, I want you to describe it to me.
I would mess it up.
No, I mean, it's like a lot of different things. Jay Scheib is a theater director. He's also a professor at MIT. He does like everything from huge spectacle, like rock operas. He's I think currently working on Bat Out of Hell, to these like the most hybrid, strange, fun productions of theater plays, like classic theater plays in a really like new, modern, technically explorative way. So I met Jay, and he's worked with a lot of the same people over the years. They call themselves the Dirty Pirouettes. I don't know how that tracks back. I'm sure it was something that happened on stage. But now I'm a part of the Dirty Pirouettes.
Right. Wow.
But they brought a production of Platonov to La Jolla Playhouse when as part of their Out of Walls. Is that what I'm saying? Without Walls. There it is. So all site specific outdoor productions. I mean, he was commissioned to kick that off there. So he did. So I was in LA at the time. I got an audition for it. I drove down to La Jolla and met Jay. And I recall it as like one of the most interesting and creatively engaging auditions I've ever been into, because usually you show up to an audition, you like go stand in front of a camera, you do what you prepared, and then you go. You're lucky to get a thank you, if anything. And he was just like, I did my monologue, and he was like, okay, cool. Now run around the room, just have fun and go play. And I was like, really?
Go play. Yes. Hell yeah.
It's like, exactly. That's what you tell an actor to do, is like, you know what? I don't know what we're doing here. Why don't you show me? Go play. As soon as an actor is given permission to do that, it's like, it's just so fun. So I immediately connected with him creatively. And so I did that production there. And it's, that one was done like a live drive-in theater. So basically Jay's stuff that he does with this group is traditional live stage theater, but then he will be on stage with you, like you can see Jay with you filming it. And then it is, and for this production, he had two cameras. So there was an actor who was also in the show who would then sometimes grab a camera and come on, and it was live edited onto the screen above. And then so I played two different roles during that production. And then when they took it to the kitchen in New York, I played a different part. I went out for that. So that was my off-Broadway deal. It's at the kitchen, which is a part of Hell's Kitchen, which is a cool theater that does some kind of performance art and alternative theater and stuff like that. And then they live streamed the live edited version to Times Square theaters and to BAM Rose Theater. So you get this, if you're there for the theater show, you get this kind of hybrid experience where you will sometimes see us like a circus act, like going under a table to get into a 2-shot, and then the edited version would be the more like cinema verite, voyeuristic, like edited version of it. And yeah, I think his manifesto pitch was, I want to make a one-take film. And then this is my way of doing it, and I want to bring people into the process. But we rehearsed it like a play. Yeah, so it was super cool, and I love doing stuff like that. Like anytime I can like navigate my way to something that's like immersive or site specific, or that kind of open playground is some of the most exciting stuff that I've had an opportunity to do. Yeah.
Well, it sounds so fascinating whenever I heard you talking about it, because it's just really forward thinking. And I didn't know that theater side of you. Yeah. But with the death of Dick Long, which I love how we're still talking about this movie years later, and that, Andy showing it at the Alamo Drafthouse along with the beta test, because like two very different directors too, I think.
Totally.
I rewatched The Death of Dick Long last night because I remember being at Fantastic Fest, and I love the film. It was one of those films where like people were like, you have to see it, but don't go in knowing anything about it. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of the film, everyone's feeling mixed. You get the people who get it and love it, and the people who are like, what the fuck did I just watch?
Yeah. And I wonder how that shifts throughout the movie, because I do think you go in and then there's like turns in the movie that you're aware of that like must immediately, I mean, I know it. So that's always been my curiosity with the audience experience. Like when I'm sitting there watching it with people, it's like, when do they change their mind about how they feel about this movie?
Oh, you feel the energy change, like right when everything's put together. It's one of those rare moments in cinema where you can like really feel the room. But with rewatching it and knowing how things play out, it was really interesting. But my favorite thing was your accent, because I know you're from Alabama, and how real that was. Just all the details that like Daniel put in there. You could tell that he's from that area, because it gave me the same feel as like, have you seen Hell or High Water?
Who's in that?
Chris Pine's in it.
Yeah.
So that takes place in like the hill country of Texas, which is like where my parents live. And I was like, oh my gosh, they got everything so right. And that's what it felt like with The Death of Dick Long, and specifically with your acting. It was to the point where even your facial expressions fit that area. And so I'd love to know more about you, like diving into your character and getting into like that little detail. Cause I feel like if they pluck somebody from LA and put them in that role, they wouldn't get those little details right.
I mean, Daniel's from that area. And I think he and Billy convinced A24 early on, like, we can't make this movie unless we are authentic. Like, that's why I'm making this movie, him being Daniel. And, they had other people considered for it. I lived out in LA for like 12 years, but I started orienting back southward just when more work was happening there. I was getting opportunities there. And so I hadn't officially changed my residence yet, actually. I think I was still houseless. So another long story. That's kind of my life. But I was back in Birmingham. So I actually got the audition from someone who knew me in Birmingham. So it's this weird, like, full circle moment where they called me in for a smaller part. And then I got to the audition, and Dan's like a hometown hero, right? And everyone knows, everyone knows Dan. And I had known Swiss Army Man, but it actually wasn't for some reason till like months before then, because I just, moved back, that I made the connection that he was from a town not far from where I was from. And then I was like, wait, the guy who made that is from, I'm totally going to work with this guy. I remember saying that to myself. And literally like 3 months later, I got an audition for this movie. And so in the room, we were relating on that, and I auditioned for a couple smaller parts. And then he just started he was like, again, that experience like I had with Jay in the theater. He's like, you know what, here, just read this one, and here, let's just play. And he's reading with me. And immediately, again, I'm like given permission to like expand upon what I do. And I think we just connected as creatives, but then it was I got a call back for Dudley. So for the younger cop.
Weird.
I know.
Oh.
So I actually was cast as Dudley first. Yeah, I know. These are like deep secrets. I mean, whatever. It's all worked out the way it was supposed to. But I was like on the phone with Dan. He's like, I'd like for you to be in my movie and play Dudley. I was like, awesome. And I had this like, there's an audition out there somewhere where I'm playing Dudley. I wonder if he'd release that at some point. But
I have the Blu-ray. I can look at that.
Yeah, like totally different take, obviously. But I mean, the casting ended up being like so right. But anyway, they had someone else in mind, a bigger name for Lydia, and that fell through. And so he was already in Alabama in pre-production, and called me. He was like, could you just come to the house? I want you to read for another character. I was like, okay, whatever. And so I'm like he's like, his partner had her cell phone, and I'm in the corner, like reading with Dan, doing basically the scene, the big reveal scene. And and then like a couple days later, they're like, would you play our lead? I'm like, yeah. And everyone was behind it. But yeah, that authenticity was super important to him. And even like, these are the moments for actors like me that matter. You know, someone taking a risk, someone believing their own creative vision enough to meet the moment and do something different. And it really paid off, I think, for everyone. But that was across the board in every choice that they made. I mean, there were a lot of locals involved. They were really like genuinely engaged with the community. Like our lunch was provided by local like farms and stuff. It really was, from process to product, a very local experience.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. And it shows.
The lady with the lawnmower down the hill, and I think Daniel told that story. I was just waiting for that part in the film. I was like, I hope she was local. Do you know if she was local?
Oh, absolutely. She's a local artist, Daisy. I'm forgetting Daisy's last name, but she's a really great local artist, actually. Yeah. So
wow.
It's a small community out there, and those guys we're all making movies together still, and yeah, there's a lot of great talent there, actually. And he really made an opportunity for a lot of people to shine. So
I hope to see more from there, because the film has a different flavor to it, even within the indie world, that really shines and is 100% my type of humor, because it's all about the little quiet moments, to me personally. And specifically talking about like the part that you were auditioning for, as the role of the wife, and for it to be the reveal, you have to play the role seriously or else it won't pay off at all. But your character had so much tension and thought, like there was so much internal thinking that you had to show on your face. I mean, did you even just think about what your face was doing, or just kind of be in the moment?
No, I mean, my face kind of does funny things when I let it. So I just knew that, like, as soon as I read the script, I mean, another reason he cast locals in it is because it's a very polarizing topic. And it's like, you have to have people tell this story that get it and know that we're not making fun of anyone, that we're really trying to like dig into the humanity. And, with my accent and all those things that you're pointing out, like, I come from this. Like my mom's side of the family is from East Tennessee, like super impoverished. Like my dad's from Memphis, Tennessee. Like my family is Southern, and they're kind of spread out all over the Southeast. So when I do Southern roles, it's like I'm plucking, I think, from a piece of my lineage. And if the women in my family know anything, it's like putting up with crazy Southern dudes,
Yes.
Like I got plenty to draw from there. Not this topic specifically, but I do feel often when I'm playing Southern women that I'm kind of channeling some of that lineage. And I read the script and was like, this is like, this, I get it. It touches me on so many levels. I don't want to overwork it. So even that scene, I was like, I read it and I knew that, I had to do some amount of preparation to be ready, but I didn't overwork it. I allow myself to show up and be surprised, to be genuinely surprised by what my other actor was throwing at me. And it's a really good lesson in, you know, how to work film as an actor when you have the freedom to like prepare just enough, but like let it live in the moment. And I think I just envisioned everything that was possible. You know, I was really like exploring what that might be like. You know,
but the audience was doing the same.
Exactly. Yeah. So it ends up becoming, I think Billy said this at one point, that Lydia is the everyman of the film. You know, she's really taking the journey with you. And so I think that's why that moment ends up being so impactful, because like the whole audience comes with you, and I get to share in your experience and you get to see how you're feeling. And it's like,
I mean, as you were working with the children today, was that your example on how to really get in character?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, yeah. So I've been like talking to a bunch of classes, right? And, you know, it's funny, I remember being an actor, and I remember this like turn in that experience. And they're at that point where they're trying to get it so right and intellectualize it. And like, I realized you don't know what you can offer a class or a generation of actors until like you're there. But I realized like there's a lot of pressure to do it right. And I get that, you know, I get that with this current like media environment and everything. And I was like, you know, try to show up and surprise yourself. Like, I know that sounds scary, but you're going to feel that a couple times, and it's going to click for you, and then you're going to get it. And so, yeah, I mean, in relationship to this, that has actually been what I've said. I'm like, you know what, learn as much as you can, but then go in and not know, be okay with not knowing. Because most of the time your character does not. And especially in this.
Well, I think people forget that you might know the whole story, but the person you're playing does not. And that's kind of hard to get out of your mind.
Yeah.
What was it like working between the two directors, like Daniel Scheinert and Jim Cummings? Like, because it does seem like they have very different personalities, and you know, they both put themselves in their films, which is funny too.
In very, very different ways. Yeah. Dan's definitely more of like I want to act with Dan, actually. It's come up since then that like maybe there's some kind of opportunity for us to act together, because Dan is an actor. Like he really is like a playful, very like, I think that's part of why he's such a great director. But that energy, that kind of emotional, empathic energy really, really comes into how he makes space for actors. And it can be a more unexpected kind of direction. You know, he really stands back. And then in Jem, he's doing so much, right? Jem is an intellectual, like he's a smart guy. And he is like in the process also, you know, rewiring the film system. You know, he's like not only trying to just make an interesting movie, but also like structurally like shake it up. And so he's got a lot going on. And so Jem, I've used this word before, but Jem is very precise. So Jem's direction, and I don't mean controlling, like he is just like, he's like editing in his head. And because of how he's like kind of designed, and a lot of indie filmmakers these days, but like how he's designed an efficiency to produce the kind of movies that he's producing, that kind of puts me in more of that, like that athletic actor space of like, show up, hit your mark, do the things. There were still a couple times where like he like knows when to let it breathe and give you space. Like the garage scene, for instance, like I have basically no dialogue, but he's just like, I'm just gonna roll, like do what you want. And we had a lot of footage there, so it was interesting. I'm sure it was interesting for him to have to go through that. But they are, as far as indie film goes, on different sides of the spectrum in that way. And it'll be interesting to see how they continue to evolve from here. Because I do think they both are trying to do things differently in their own way.
Right. They're on really strong trajectories. And I think the one thing they have in common is that they want to share their knowledge with everybody else who's knocking on the door saying, how did you do this?
Yeah.
So I respect that a lot. But you are also making your own films, and I would love to hear more about that and what it's been like producing too.
So in that kind of shift back southward, it was also a transition for me to, start taking more ownership. I don't like the word ownership because in the context of film, it does feel like very ego driven, but like more autonomy over what I'm creating. And I mean, anyone who spends any time in Hollywood is going to feel a little disenchanted by the process, I think, and the system has served me some, but largely not. And so I needed to start figuring out how to create for myself. And producing just made sense because it felt like, okay, this is a role that I can play where I'm involved from the beginning. And I'm really mostly a creative producer. I've learned how to produce more as I've gone along, but I really started off creative producing and just saying, these are the kinds of things I want to do. Now bringing these creatives together to help me to that goal, and then being an actor in it, and pretty much taking off the producer hat once I start acting. And I like that hyphenate. But I have been, over these last several years, exploring the other roles that I feel like I could take on. Writing is really the one that I'm deep in right now. And I've spent a lot of the last couple of years finding my own rhythms with that. And to be honest, it's been a hard one for me. I think it's a very important one for me. I think cracking my voice in that medium is like crucial to my journey and crucial to the kinds of stories that I have been wanting to tell. But I'm evolving from a poet mind. I'm evolving from someone who has written a shit ton of bad and good poetry.
That's good. You gave yourself some credit there.
Yeah, I was like, there's some bad poetry, but there's actually some really good poetry. And I read back on it and I'm like, you're a writer. And I realize now that I am writing, like I'm enjoying it a ton. Like I think it's been good for me to find that kind of private space as a creative in this. I love the collaboration of film. That's why I do it. But it is interesting for me to kind of take some space and learn myself as an artist in a private writing space, because it's such a vulnerable, sensitive, honest place, and you really have to like face yourself. And I think I keep looking for those roles where I have to face myself. Like that seems like a way that I make decisions. And right now I'm facing one that's pretty deep, and I think like bigger than me, like I said, it's like, I think it's generational. Like I'm breaking some real generational patterns with this one. So I've written a lot. I am not sure how I want to move forward with my writing. I co-wrote with a really good friend of mine, Jen West. We have a film about a wacko Southern artist couple that live together and are kind of at this crossroads with where they are in their art.
Yeah.
And then their house gets stuck inside a tornado. So it's like this existential magical realism kind of Kaufman-esque, like
Whoa.
indie film. I know. And we've been, navigating and trying to get that made for the last couple of years. So I have partnered my voice with lots of people in different points along the way. And I do know that the big shift in my trajectory creatively is writing something on my own and figuring out then how I want to be a part of it. Like acting in it still feels like the right attachment, but people keep telling me to direct too, and I'm trying to reckon with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool to see how like Brea Grant has taken her career and kind of done it all and still kind of being like a indie person as well. Because it's weird. I mean, because you want people, it's like your music in the 90s. Like I was listening to somebody in an interview, I forgot who it was, and it was Nathan Fielder. He was talking about how the generations now like want to sell out. Like that's their goal, is to sell out. And then like for us, like growing up, it's like your favorite band sells out. You're like, oh, I'm not going to watch you anymore. And that's how sometimes I feel that way about like my indie film directors and actors, especially directors, because, oftentimes they're like, okay, now you're going to make a Marvel movie. And then they don't let you have your voice. And then it turns into something different, or then you get fired or whatever.
Yep.
I know we're just talking about, you just starting writing and, getting into doing your smaller thing, but do you feel like you want to live in the indie world forever if you could, or have your feet in both like you do in LA and Alabama?
Yeah. I do feel like an octopus, like in a lot of different ways. I've really spread myself out. So it's a good question. And if I'm going to answer it honestly, which I'm sure you would hope I do, I mean, I want to find that intersection, right? I do believe that there is, and if there's any time for there to be an intersection of creativity and commerce, like I think it's now. Like the people that I'm talking about are all moving up and doing their own TV shows. And like, I mean, the reason I do want to dip my feet into, a stable series or something bigger, we'll say, is I'm kind of, I love indie, and I love that I know the work is good, but it is exhausting. Like it isn't, we're still figuring out how to make it sustainable. And so, yeah, I would love to have a little more, stability is a funny word to use in this business, but a little more consistency. And I think that's the main reason, but I don't want to believe that it can't be something that's also creative and enjoyable. And maybe something like enjoyable for a reason I can't see yet. I've done a lot of heavy hitting dramas or playing the heavy hitter in the drama or in the comedy. But I would love to do something funny. It's just fun. And maybe that's what the world of which you're talking about too. Like maybe I can let go of, yeah, you're right. Damn that integrity, man.
Like, you can do anything.
I mean, I do feel like, I was just on another little screening flashback tour and university talk with John Huertas, who I did a movie with, Reparation. And, he's done a ton of TV in his career. And we're talking, and of course he wants the gritty indies right now, he wants to find something that he can really sink his teeth into, and it's going to be scrappy and rough. And I'm like, I just want a series for a couple months,
Right.
So I think we're always oscillating between worlds, because that's how you sustain a career, at least right now. But I am holding out for the intersection. I think that we all of us scrappy indie folk deserve that, at some point.
Yeah. Right. I mean, I think everybody deserves that. And it's interesting because kind of what you're saying, you have these big actors who are trying to go the other direction and make an indie film. And then there's so much judgment on them the other way, so much pressure to make it work. But this leads to a question that I genuinely wanted to make sure I ask you is, having a creative career, everybody from the outside's like, oh, you're going to need to go to fancy premieres and film festivals and be interviewed and do all these questions. But there's so much sacrifice in making that work. And I would love to hear from you. What kind of sacrifices do you think you've had to make to have this amazing career?
Oh, thank you for asking it. It's funny because some of the kids brought that up today too. And it just goes to show how aware they are of the changes in this industry. And that makes me happy. That makes me excited. But I'd say first and foremost, family and relationships and consistency early on. You're really you really are beholden to the rhythms of the business, whether that's you got to do this audition in 2 hours, or you got to do this, where it's not even you're getting anything out of it in that moment, but you have to kind of keep your perspective bright, that you are oh, well, at least I get an opportunity to act, but really after years and years and years, that just is draining, because you're using so much of yourself just to get the opportunity. So I think time and relationships are definitely a sacrifice. But I will say that I've grown in that area over the last few years, because of #pandemic makes you reevaluate anything. It's relationships, and so I spent a lot of the last few years. I met my husband on a film in February, right before the pandemic, and he lives in Belgium.
Wait, is this the gaffer guy? Why you be a different person? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know. I only date a camera department. He's a cinematographer.
Okay. Sorry, wrong guy.
Okay, no one's offended. It's fine. Wait, I don't know who the gaffer guy you are talking about is, but
I can tell you later.
Okay, we'll talk about it later. It's fine. They're all healthy, open, communicative partnerships, and whether they're now or past. So anyway, but yeah, I put a lot of energy into like my life over the last few years and like taking care of myself. And I do feel like with these string of screenings this month that are for old films, and kind of entering a new era, I'm reevaluating a lot of what you're saying about sacrifices. And I think I'm at a point now where I can, like, I've built up enough of a resume and enough of recognition, and depending on what room I walk into, that's going to be viewed differently. But I know what my success is and what my worth is now. And I've had to stand up for that repeatedly to the point where I do believe it. And I do bring that with me in a way that's like integrated into my system. And so I think I'm really excited. Yeah, of course, I say that now knowing you've seen the beta test and how much they make fun of that phrase. I'm so excited. So very excited. Everything's so exciting. But I am genuinely excited or optimistic about how my shift in priorities and what I'm willing to sacrifice and what I'm not willing to sacrifice is going to dictate the next phase of my career. Because there are definitely things that I'm not willing to sacrifice anymore. And integrity being what it is and being what we're talking about as far as the things I choose, that's one thing. But what's so very important to me now is process and how people deal with each other behind the scenes and when they're inviting you to the table or how they're inviting you to the table. And so much of respect and value is seen in those circumstances. Like, I can show up and get in front of the camera and compartmentalize it pretty well. But in indie film, you're often like playing multiple roles outside of the actual production as well as an actor. Like I'm often like, I've got good reps, but I'm advocating for myself a lot. And I'm having those conversations directly with producers and directors a lot. And a lot of that has been me having to like spell out my value. And I've gotten better at like picking my battles and knowing that sometimes that fight is one within myself. But I am recognizing that sometimes I just have to make space for those kinds of conversations, because those are the kinds of conversations that we need to be having if we're going to grow together. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad that you're standing up for yourself. And I'm really thankful for cell phones, because I feel like if somebody's like a total jerk, then it's like, you know what, call them out. Show the evidence. They don't deserve to be working anymore.
Oh man, I can write an email. Let me tell you. But I had someone share with me recently, AJ Haynes. She's actually a fucking badass rock and roll musician. She's a lead singer of the Seratones, and I'm going to be like coaching her in like one of her first acting roles. And I was talking about this and sharing some like frustrations I've had recently. And she was like, I am learning. She shared this TED talk with me, and I'll share it with you too. But she's like, I'm learning that instead of calling people out, and this is mostly for the preservation of my own energy, I'm calling people in. Like, I really do in my heart want you to see what I have to say and want you to understand me. But I have to invite you into the conversation, even if my anger is pushing me up against, and I feel like I need to like call you out. Sometimes maybe that's the road that you end up having to.
Yeah, like the creepy touchers. That's what I'm thinking of.
Don't touch me. That's a call out. Do you totally understand my value? Maybe call you in and let's have a conversation. And then if you still don't, we'll fuck off. But but yeah, for the sake of my own energy, I am trying to find different ways to have those conversations, because in my heart and in my mind, I still want to have them. So I just want to find better ways of doing it in a way that actually is like growthful and helpful. So yeah.
I like that positivity. I think from the pandemic, we were like, look, we kind of have to be positive now. And I think a lot of like the mean humor is going to go away because of it, because we were all like, we need hope.
We're all suffering so much. Like, we need a break. Like, I want to call you out, but I'm tired.
Basically. Oh, well, I love talking to you so much. I feel like I just want some wine and just to like go into more about all your boyfriends since I already know so much.
Yeah, I'm like, girl, tell me about what you know. Where they at? What they doing? What are they saying about me?
So we could wrap things up and you can go and do your fun premieres and everything and more interviews. I know Andy's like, here you go. Here's your schedule.
I know. I was like, Andy, you know what? Whatever you got, just throw it at me. And he has thrown it at me. And I feel like I'm on the premiere tour of this movie right now.
Well, I think movies have longer legs now because of streaming and everything like that. So I think it's really appropriate. And well, and let's bring The Death of Dick Long to all the small towns across America and have conversations, because that's what that movie was made for. This is based on this is where you were nice and you were like, these are real people. I mean, because I'm not going to go off on another thing, but genuinely, when you grow up in a small town, you realize that they're real people and you don't want to make fun of them. Yeah. And that's what the film did. But at the same time, it's one of those films where like, I know somebody who could kind of be like that.
I mean, we totally do. I don't think you grow up in Alabaster, Alabama, and don't live next door to that stuff. Like,
right. Okay, so what is next for you? Do you know?
Yeah. So, I mean, aside from the things I'm writing and developing, I just finished a project with Julian Roosevelt. He is art installation, talk about hybrid projects again. He mostly does like multimedia video installations, but he also is the director of Manifesto, which I'm not sure if you're aware of, but that's with Cate Blanchett, where she played like 14 different characters.
Whoa.
That might have premiered at Sundance. I can't remember. This was like 5 or 6 years ago. This is his next project. And she actually plays the voice of a singing tiger in it. And I have he kind of works in vignettes. And so when the movie is stitched together, it'll be kind of a series of vignettes. And I play a factory worker rapping on feminism. So it's pretty cool.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know when the film version will release, but the art installation is currently touring in Europe right now and should be at the Armory in New York, I think in November.
Oh, I love the Armory. I did an indie comic show there. That's a great space.
Oh, cool. I haven't been. I hope to make it out.
Yeah. And Europe is so much kinder to artists than America. So I bet you that's going over really well there.
Yeah, they love it. It's like basically all about like the deconstruction of the American economical system. So it's like, yeah, I mean, look Julian up. He's really interesting. He kind of takes pieces from existing material. Like some of my monologue was Audre Lorde. And then constructs monologues and scenes out of it. So people that have spoken in length intellectually about these things, and he creates something creatively, narratively around it. So it's pretty cool. And it's smart and out there. Yeah. And yes, you're right. They definitely value art differently. Hope we can follow suit soon here in America. Well, here we are shaking our heads.
We'll get there. certain spots of America are already like very hip to it. So.
Well, it may not be federal support, but there is a lot of resources and support here and organizations and grants and things, and it does exist, but it's just a little harder to find, I think, for artists. But
yeah, I mean, I have to have you back because I adore you. We'll have to talk about producing and finding that money, because I don't think, that's something that like a lot of schools don't hit on when it comes to making films.
And let's bring someone else on too, because I have not cracked it all.
Okay, what the hell? That should be your goal before we talk next.
Okay, I'll figure out how to make money to make movies. No, I have some ideas. I have some ideas. Actually, now that we're speaking to it, anyone who is looking for information and guidance on that, follow Seed and Spark. Seed and Spark is a crowdfunding platform specifically for filmmakers, and they have tons of free resources, and it's I think they're doing a lot of good things and a lot of things right. So I'm just gonna throw that out there.
Perfect.
Seed and Spark.
Well, thank you so much, Virginia. I hope you have a good time with the Q&As after both films. I'm assuming there will be one.
Yes, I definitely will. Yeah, and it'll be fun. I think a lot of the students are coming too, so we'll just
great,
keep talking to them.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was fun.